Good day. Welcome back to the Binteger podcast. My name is Binny. I'm the host of this podcast, the Binteger podcast, where integrity calls and wholeness responds. We talk all things related to pursuing with and living in integrity. I'm so glad you could be with us today. We're talking about if partial integrity counts. Does partial integrity count? Another way of saying this is some may be listening to and considering integrity in their lives, but they're saying, I don't want to sign up for the whole deal. This reminds me, if you will, of some subscription services, perhaps, where they offer the option of only subscribing for a little bit, maybe a teaser or a trial to let you know if you like it enough to buy more, to commit to more. So there are some subscription plans like that. Others would think of that in the context of a sale, like they want to just try a little teaser here. And if they like what they're experiencing, then yes, they'll want to go ahead and try some more. Now, the question still stands. Does partial integrity count? Can you do the same thing with integrity? Can you subscribe only partially to integrity and say, let me just try a little bit here and see if this works out in my favor and determine if I want to continue on in this commitment, or if I want to maybe bow out because it's just not serving what I want to experience for myself? So in relation to all that, I'm going to answer that in just a few moments. But first, like we often make time for on this podcast, we want to spend some time doing a feelings check-in, which is a really important part of how I facilitate integrity in my life, especially by pursuing honesty in the moment. If this is a discipline you haven't tried or explored, let me encourage you to join me in doing so. The reason why we do this is so that we can get acquainted with ourselves. A huge part of walking with integrity is for one to know themselves well. And for one to know themselves well, they have to know how to be able to assess what's going on internally. What are their values? What are the things that they really hold dear to? Where are the non-negotiables? Where are the boundaries drawn? All those sorts of things. But we do a feelings check-in where we say, in this moment, how am I feeling right now? Where am I at? What's going on in my life? How can I give space to acknowledging what is there? And I think this is a really helpful component of getting to know ourselves well enough to be able to speak well about what our needs are, what our values are, what our commitments are in life. A really helpful skill. And I use what I call the Love Smart cards. These come in a little box like this. It really helps in conflict resolution that is they call it nonviolent communication. And so it really helps to facilitate those conversations through conflict to be able to help both sides feel heard and acknowledged from their various points while they're expressing their concerns. I'm using a couple of cards here from the positive feelings category and one that is describing one of the unpleasant feelings category. So in this moment right now, I am feeling happy and delighted. I recently made an acquaintance, I recently established a romantic connection, and it's fairly exciting. I'm so delighted with what I'm seeing there, the conversations we're having, the ways that we're connecting. It makes me very happy and delighted. And so that's super fantastic. That's a zone that I have been very cautious in, that romantic zone. One, because I've made some significant mistakes in my lifetime, and I've been learning for some time some of the things that I've contributed myself, and some of the boundaries and some of the values that I wanted to see expressed if I do connect that way again. And one of those that I was really cautious about was getting overly excited about potentially meeting someone, and so I was very against that. However, meeting this individual, it's been fantastic, and the connection has been wonderful, and there's a lot of excitement, and I sense that concern of, am I connecting too quickly here? Like, I want to make sure my excitement doesn't eclipse my reason and my values. And so in my community of friends, we call this like new relationship energy. And so I'm very aware of new relationship energy, and I try to quell it and say, no, I need to still think with my mind and yes, feel with my heart, but I don't want to lose a frame of reference. And so along those lines, I'm feeling kind of vulnerable. I'm feeling vulnerable because this is a risk. It's always a risk when we share heart space with others, whether it's platonically or romantically, I believe. But as we share that heart space, it's a risk because we're not guaranteed if this is going to work well in our favor or if it is going to just blow up on us, right? And when we share heart space, it is the kind of exchange where if it goes wrong, man, that's tough. That's like that's really painful. I know I recently had a significant disagreement with one of my siblings, a dear sibling that I really value a lot of our exchanges and interactions, but unexpectedly we had a really significant disagreement, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good, and I felt really sad in the aftermath. And I remember feeling this is really scary business when we open up our hearts to others. When we feel hurt, when we feel slighted, oh, that's like a really scary thing. And so I felt that sense recently, just a few days ago, in relation to this new connection, saying, wow, this is really scary ground to be walking on because I could get hurt in this process. And yet we acknowledge the risk and we keep going forward. And so yeah, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling delighted and vulnerable at the same time. That's where I'm at presently in this season. It's a fun time. It's an exciting time. And yet we still also want to remember the things we're committed to, like this podcast, which I want to continue investing in and sharing with you all because this is so important. Let me just give you a few other feelings as a way of expanding your vocabulary in defining and describing where you're at. So here, I'll just go through a few, like a handful. On the positive side, we're looking at loving, adoring, trusting, aroused, and clear-headed. Once again, loving, adoring, trusting, aroused, and clear-headed. And then in the challenging or unpleasant feeling side, we have violent, torn, shocked, bored, and desperate. Once again, violent, torn, shocked, bored, and desperate. The challenging ones, oftentimes people think should be sort of quelled and stifled, stuffed down. And I think the whole range of emotions are invaluable in helping us feel. My dear Bintegers, we are running out of time. I'm already past halfway here, and we're still talking about feelings, but that's important stuff too, isn't it? I'm answering the question, does partial integrity count, or can partial integrity count? And this is to say, for those who are asking, hey, is there a way that I can just try a little bit without committing to the whole thing? Can I try a little bit long term and just have it in this one area of my life? And I think the short answer for me is no. I'd love to hear if you disagree. I would love to hear what your rationale is and how you think through that. So feel free to drop me a line in the comments, help me understand your reasoning if you're like, no, the partial integrity does count. I don't think it counts, especially because when we're thinking of integrity, I like to think of integrity as if it has its own personality, and we're asking for this relationship with integrity. And integrity is when it considers getting into this relationship with us. It's considering and saying, hey, I want everything. I don't share very well. I want to lay claim on everything in your life. And so it comes into our lives and it considers us and says, I'm going to give you all the amazing benefits of walking with integrity if you yield every single area of your life, from your family life to your business life to your private life to your thought life to your like the whole range, everything from your finances to your relationships to your time management, like every single sphere. I believe integrity comes in and says, I lay claim to all of this. And so I don't think integrity would be interested in engaging and connecting with those who are saying, I only want you in this little small area. It says, I want everything. It's very ravenous in the way it impacts and influences everything in our lives. And so, yes, it's not possible in my economy of understanding integrity for it to be a partial commitment. It isn't possible, because that would entail that we are only being ethical, we're only being moral when it's convenient or when we want to. Otherwise, we don't commit to it. It's just based on our interest in when we're saying, yeah, I guess I could, or, I'm interested this time or not. And so let me give you some analogies. Consider like the weather vane on buildings. That little, like sometimes it's in the image of a chicken, sometimes it's an image of just an arrow, but the weather vane, the wind comes and blows it, and you can kind of see which direction the wind is blowing by the way it turns the weather vane. And so I think of these shifts in life that can affect a person's commitments to walking with integrity. If they're like that weather vane, they're easily moved around by the winds and fluctuations of the scenario, and they don't have a very firm grasp on what integrity demands. And so they're easily swayed off course from walking with integrity by a gentle breeze of other options that would lead them away. So consider that analogy. Or maybe the chameleon. Some of you are more familiar with the chameleon analogy, where the chameleon is this creature that can change its skin to match its background. So it camouflages itself, not only for protection, but also for hunting as well. And so the chameleon, as it can change its skin tone to camouflage itself, it's kind of like how some individuals are when they change to suit this scenario. They change, in essence, just to say, hey, this is advantageous at this point in time for me to be this way, but not in this time. So I'm not going to walk with integrity here. And so they can be like a chameleon that changes its color, or even like a broken compass, which the dial isn't working and it's not helping point you to true north. And so they're operating with a very faulty sense of what integrity looks like, because they're subscribing to a partial integrity that does not encapsulate and cover all areas of their life, which lends to a lack of credibility. And finally, another analogy that I often enjoy using is like the leaf in the wind. Especially in fall season, we see the leaves falling off the trees and they're blowing all over. Now, those leaves don't get a chance to say where they're going or not going. The wind dictates that. And so they're just along for the ride, in the same way as individuals who subscribe partially to integrity are along for the ride, because they're not in control. They're really still being controlled by all those other things that are leading them away from walking with the life of integrity. I just thought it might be helpful for me to also define what integrity is, so that you guys understand in the context of what I mean when it's not possible to walk with partial integrity, and that doesn't really count. Integrity, in my understanding, is the alignment of one's internal values with their external actions, while they're being true to themselves and respectful of those around them who are also trying to figure out their own way. That's how I understand integrity. And so those internal values that you subscribe to, how well are you acting out those values? For so many, myself included, I lived a lifetime, dear Bintegers. I lived a lifetime without integrity in my life. And it was I just thought of another analogy, by the way. And let me just share this last analogy. We're just coming out of the holiday season. People are probably going to be taking their Christmas lights down, but you know what it's like when you have a string of Christmas lights and one of them along the way doesn't work, and then it affects almost every other light. So when one shorts out or burns out, it affects all the rest in that circuit, and they just all go out. And same thing with integrity. You can try partial integrity and walk with it just for a little bit, but then at some point it's just going to short, and it's going to like nullify all of your commitments, all the areas that you're trying to, but not committing to in a full way of walking with integrity. So my short answer again, is it possible? Does partial integrity count for one to commit to walking with integrity only once in a while? I don't think it does. I don't think it does because, like I said, I like thinking of the idea of integrity as personified, and it asks for everything. So my dear Binteger, if you're not seriously committing to, wholeheartedly saying, I'm in this for the long haul, I'm in this to see this to the very end, I think you're wasting your time, and you might as well just indulge in whatever it is that you really want to do, your heart's desire, and put aside walking with integrity. But if you're committed to seeing your life become whole, where you're aligning your internal values with your external actions, this is the place to be as we talk more about what it looks like to experience wholeness as we commit to walking with integrity. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.